Today's episode is brought to you by Taft Law and its Franchise Advance program, a one-of-a-kind program developed by your host, Josh Brown, to help entrepreneurs assess, convert, and grow your business the right way through sound franchise structures. To learn more, go to taftlaw.com and type Franchise Advance Program in the search bar.
If you think like, act like, or are trying to grow like a franchise, then the Franchise Euphoria podcast is for you. Hello and welcome everybody. Josh Brown here, and I created this podcast for one main goal: to help people who are trying to grow their business through franchising or franchise-like structures to do it the right way. I've been practicing law now as a franchise lawyer for many, many years, and I've seen it done the right way and the wrong way. And this podcast is not filled with a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. Rather, I talk with real people, people who have been there, have done it, are doing it right now. And I also dive deep into specific topics related to franchising. So if this is of interest to you, you are at the right place. Enjoy. On today's episode of Franchise Euphoria, thrilled to have on Rob Arnold, who is the CEO of Launch Entertainment, a family entertainment park franchise concept. The family entertainment industry is projected to reach $69.5 billion by 2030. And Launch Entertainment is tapping into the potential with its aggressive plans for expansion, aiming to reach 100 units over the next few years. What started as a mom-and-pop trampoline park in 2012 has now shifted to a full-service family entertainment concept featuring several exciting attractions for anyone to join. There are now over 30 locations, with a new park that just opened in Michigan. Looking forward to the conversation with Rob and talking about the start of the concept and where it's headed. And he's also going to talk about what it's been like turning a business into a franchise and how the model best works with franchisees. Hope you enjoy the interview. Hey, Rob, welcome to Franchise Euphoria. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Josh. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Really excited to have you on. Really didn't know much about Launch Entertainment, the franchise that you're the head of, and I believe you launched, no pun intended. But looking forward to talking to you about sort of your history with this franchise, how you decided on the model, and then I think you guys have added to that model over the years as you continue to expand. So really looking forward to speaking to you today and learning about your story. Yeah,
thanks. I appreciate you having me on today. I mean, it's been quite the roller coaster. You'll get to hear about the roller coaster. It's been quite the evolution. And, this industry, the two industries, the family entertainment and then franchising as well, has just been, it's been great to us and very interesting. And, first, love to share any information I can with you, and excited to be.
When did you start it?
So we started. I guess the idea came up in 2011. My wife and I we've been entrepreneurs forever. I've owned my own business since I was 19. I ended up leaving college because I started a construction business that took off. My wife owned a gift shop. Owned a fitness training center. And so, we were always entrepreneurs early on. We got into real estate. But in 2011, we were taking essentially the first vacation since we got married in 2003. We always worked 7 days a week around the clock. And so we said, enough's enough. It's time to get out. Our kids at the time were 4 and 18 months. And we said, hey, let's go see Disney. We've got Mickey Mouse Clubhouse on 24/7 on the TV at home. So let the kids meet the characters in person. So, anyways, decided to take a trip to Florida. Happened to be a rainy day. So instead of being that family that trudges around the park in those silly ponchos, we were looking for some indoor entertainment. And my wife happened to stumble upon what they called an indoor trampoline arena at the time. And we looked at the website and we said, holy smokes, this thing's unbelievable. Growing up as teenagers, my wife was a gymnast, so she grew up on trampolines, and I did X Games type competitions across the country on rollerblades. And so we spent a lot of our youth on trampolines doing flips and twists. So while the kids were going to benefit from this visit, this was a very mom and dad selfish moment to go see a place that was actually our dream that we had as kids. So so 2011, I'll give you a little bit more of the story. We end up finding this place online, 40 minutes outside of Orlando, off the main drag, couple lefts, couple rights into the back of an industrial park. And, we looked at each other and we said, are we in the right place? Because, right. So you go to Orlando and everything is like in your face, and you've got, billboards, and everything's electronic and crazy, and just, it's just got that wow effect. And here we are, we're standing in front of a brick warehouse in the back of an industrial park, with this little tiny sign on the building. And we said, well, hey, we bought tickets, so let's get after it. Got the kids inside, got geared up, and sure enough, the inside of the building looked just like the website. It was vibrant. It was fun. And within 5 minutes of jumping, we were sweating. The kids were sweating. And my wife looked at me and said, we need to open one of these. And I looked at her.
Were there any others? I mean, how many others were you aware of? I mean, I know there was obviously, you mentioned one, but how many other trampoline type parks were there at that time? Because that seems pretty early.
It was early, yeah. So it was there at that time. Actually, there were more than I thought. There were about 150 or so across the country. But being New Englanders and being on the East Coast, it's almost like everything cool starts on the West Coast, and eventually it makes its way to the East Coast. Everything from
it tells you there's a market there too, right? It's like, oh, wow, there's more than I thought out here. So there's got to be people going to these places.
Oh, for sure. So there were about 150 and sure enough, but nothing had hit Rhode Island. We're from Rhode Island. We live in Rhode Island, born and raised. We live here forever. Never, the idea wasn't in Rhode Island yet. Really, we hadn't heard of it around the Boston market. There was one that existed in the Boston market, but it was a, rinky dink, same thing in the back of a industrial park, real dirty, smelled like feet. But it was, really hadn't swept across the country per se.
So when you sort of saw this area, you kind of you're outside of Orlando. Then what did you guys think? I mean, it's sort of off the beaten path at that point.
Yeah, she first said we need to open one of these. I responded with, "You're out of your mind." And then 5 minutes later, I started looking around and seeing other families and children sweating. And I was counting heads and counting $20 bills. And I looked at my wife and I said, "You're onto something here." And this is really cool. It's really fun. And, I figured, we were in a blue collar area in a warehouse district. If these guys are successful here, oh my gosh, imagine if we took this to a retail area, a retail market, and actually give something like this visibility. So, I think it struck us that, hey, if you could stick this thing in the middle of nowhere in the back of a warehouse, and if you build it, they will come, like, what'll happen if we put it in front of their faces?
Well, and it wasn't that much longer after that you guys actually opened your first location, right, in 2012?
Yeah. So what we did was we ruined the rest of our vacation because we went back to our condo and we crunched numbers. the rest of the 10
you guys
days.
are entrepreneurs. You are. I could just see it happening.
Yeah. So I called. So I started going to school for engineering. My best friend growing up also went to school for mechanical engineering and civil engineering, and I called him from there and I said, Hey, Joe, you gotta look at this website and take a peek. Look at this. These trampolines. They're all conjoined. It's madness. I said, what do you? We got to design these. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's telling me I'm out of my mind, right? And, fast forward another year and he's head of engineering at launch. So what started at everybody telling each other they're crazy ended up, turning into a wild success. So it's pretty interesting.
Well, it's all entertainment. It's family entertainment. Obviously, you have the active nature associated with it, and so it has a lot of those key elements. At what point after you launch, I presume you had all the normal type of startup excitement and also probably, struggles along the way. But at what point in time did you first think about franchising?
It's funny. So because my wife and I already had multiple businesses, we looked at this and said, we really are looking for something that we don't have to be at every single day. Let's go be a franchisee. And so we did our diligence and we went around and we actually visited other franchise locations. We met with some of the other CEOs of the earlier concepts, some of the early, guys that came out of the gates real fast. And by the time we were done doing our research, we said, oh my gosh, there's nothing to this. A warehouse, a check-in desk, concrete floors and trampolines, birthday party rooms. And if you want pizza, go down the road. Our visions didn't really align with the brands that existed at the time because they kept saying, we're in the fitness industry. You'll never see junk food here. You'll never see video games here. And
we're like, no, you're in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, we just said Chuck E. Cheese on steroids. That's what we kept saying. And it was, because we had little kids at the time and, not to knock Chuck E. Cheese, because Chuck E. Cheese is great, but it's, as a kid, you're out of your mind at Chuck E. Cheese. As a parent, you're sitting there saying, oh my gosh, another Chuck E. Cheese birthday party. Can't there be another place? And so we were in that sweet spot of having a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old continuing to go to Chuck E. Cheese. And we said, we've just got to build a better mousetrap. But no, it's better location, better facility. And so, yeah.
So did you was the first location in a retail type center, or did you guys go to the warehouse space, in part because I imagine you get a nice per square foot price point, I would imagine?
Yeah. So the first location was retail, and actually I'll just kind of back up a little bit to tell you a little thing about, a little side note about so I didn't answer the question you asked before, but so when we were done looking at done saying, hey, we're not going to be a franchisee. But you know what? If this thing pops off the way we want it, if these guys are franchising, maybe we ought to think about franchising. And so I started going to franchise conferences. I went to the IFE. I paid to sit in on a class. I believe that Michael Seed Associates was giving it was a 2-day seminar on how to start a franchise. And I was sitting in the room with a whole bunch of people that might have had multiple units. And everybody went around a room and they said, oh, how many do you have? And when are you going to start franchising? When in this? When in that? And, and they kind of come to me and said, how many do you have open? I said, none. And the whole room kind of laughed, and like, who's this idiot sitting in the room? He doesn't even have a business open yet. And he's talking about franchising. So I think there's a little fire in the belly coming out of that place saying, you know what?
Yeah, but Rob, you know what? It's such a unique story because most people who think about franchising, they only think about it because their customers, after they are already open, come in and say, hey, are you guys a franchise, or where's other locations? And then the light bulb goes off. You had the forethought. You guys had the forethought because of your previous experience to think about that ahead of time, which I think puts you ahead of the game.
I'll tell you, it was coming in with zero franchise experience and sitting through some of the seminars it was eye-opening. Great experience.
You're like, I don't have to make these same mistakes.
Yeah. And what? I guess the thing is like the type, my wife and I are the type that if we get into something and we're passionate about something, we almost do it until we hate it. Like we get so wrapped up in it. We watch every YouTube video, read every book, and try to network with everybody that we can. And so we really we dove head first. And obviously we needed a proof of concept. So that there lies the, opening the doors. But yeah, we opened the doors in 2012. First location, within an hour and a half, the place was sold out on grand opening day. I remember walking around. My brother is he's a famous DJ. And so he was DJing our event. And I remember the song House of Pain, Jump Around playing, which you probably know that song. I looked around and I saw 150 people jumping in the air. And for the first time ever, I felt in my life, wow, we just created something that is completely out of my control right now. It was interesting. It was just, there's some definite emotions of, wow, look at this. This is successful. People showed up, but oh my gosh, we better we better get a handle on this because something bad's going to happen. And, and so we really just, from then on, we just dug right into creating operations manuals, creating, solidifying the org chart. And so while we were cleaning up, we said, hey, let's go look for location number 2. And that's what we did.
Well, tell me on location number 1, what's the look and feel of it? I mean, obviously we're on an audio podcast now, but set up the sort of visual. I know it's changed. And I want to kind of get that visual change over time, but your first location, what's it look like? How big is it? Do you have food? Is it just, I presume you had food. What kind of food? I mean, what are we dealing with location number 1? Yeah,
that's a great question. So what we now call that is our Gen 1 park. And so Gen 1, from outside looking in, we took down an old Sports Authority, but we split it with Planet Fitness. So Planet Fitness took 22,000 square feet. They subleased 18,500 square feet to us. And so we kind of had this long, narrow, we're on the retail corridor, but we're definitely paying below market rent because we've got this funky space. And by the way, we could take it because we'll design the trampolines to fit the space and make this happen. So very undesirable for other concepts, but for us, it was like, hey, sweet, we're on the main drag, locating ourselves on Route 2 in Warwick, Warwick, Rhode Island, which is, I believe, 80+% of retail tax dollars in the state come from that street. So Planet Fitness on the left, Launch on the right. Kind of a funky color clash. You got the purple and yellow. You got a lime green and yellow, taking up the building. But very, I guess, synergistic. They were busy during the day. During the week, we were busy on the weekends. There was always a full parking lot between the two of us. Come inside. We have a check-in desk. We had 9 video games at the time because that's really all that was left for space at the end. And they weren't very good ones. They were old. There were a couple claw games, a race car game. We had an open party area, which held 4 birthday party tables. It was about 2,000 square feet or so. And then we had trampoline courts that took up about 12,000 square feet with a big platform. The concession stand, I call it a concession stand. We now have a restaurant. I'll get to that later, but the pizza, I don't think I would feed my dog now. We would send comment cards out to birthday parties, and it was like, service 5 stars, experience 5 stars, wait staff 5 stars, check, right? And you get food 1 star, tastes like cardboard, wouldn't feed this to my dog, the comments that we get. So we definitely, in the world of, hey, where can we improve? That was the first. If you think about what you're doing, you're launching like multiple concepts in one. You know what I mean? It's hard enough to do a restaurant just by itself. Well, you combine that with everything else that you're doing, and you're having to keep. But who was doing the food at that time? I mean, you don't have to name names, but was it just somebody who was just making pizzas in the back, or did you outsource it to somebody? Yeah, and we didn't have a restaurant. We didn't have anybody with restaurant experience. I mean, and really, so nobody had done trampoline parks, so nobody could teach us how to do trampoline parks. We had a manager at the time who came from a roller skating rink and had never seen the volume that we were seeing, and he got completely overwhelmed. And then we had another really great guy that eventually became our general manager that took over as kitchen manager, and he was learning on the fly as well. And so, our experiences prior to this, I mean, I built the place with my bare hands. I had a construction company. I did all the build out. I did everything myself with my crew. But running this was a complete, I've never filled a till before with money. I never had to go handle all this amount of cash and deal with this flow of customers. So we were definitely, we were all in for sure.
How soon was it that you went that you actually had your second location open from the first one?
11 months.
So talk about that, because, so many people who are listening and so many people who experience business growth and even think about franchising as that growth mechanism, they have to experience going from 1 to 2. And going from 1 to 2 can be very exciting, And there's a reason that's a great way to prove a concept. And that's because in part, you can't be in multiple places at the same time. So a lot of the things that maybe weren't working well, but they were good enough for one location, become highlighted areas or opportunities to do better at a second location. And so talk about that a little bit, what that was like for you guys going from 1 to 2.
Yeah. Oh, it was interesting. I've got to be honest. I mean, we still have some of the key people that we hired from day one. Amanda Pfeiffer is my right-hand person. She's been in it since day one, started as a supervisor and is now chief of staff of the company. She, along with several others in the company, we surrounded ourselves with people that, would work around the clock. If you called them at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night, it's, what do you need? Where do you want me to be? What do you want me to do? And so I think starting there is the biggest, if you have the right people, and everybody says a very cliche thing, it's all about the people. It is all about the people. Right. And so you have that team that has a relentless focus on this. And so it was interesting. So it was in Hartford, Connecticut, which is an hour and a half away. And so logistically, not the easiest, right? And especially for Rhode Islanders who don't travel more than 20 minutes, Hartford was felt like a miles, forever away. So my wife, who's the CEO of the company, along with Amanda and another, Patty, our bookkeeper, and everybody else, what they ended up doing was they documented everything that we had in the park. What are our computer systems? What are our cameras? What type of flooring do we have? What's working? What's not? And created this master list of 1,200 items. And then we created a Gantt chart from there and said, here's our end date. Here's what we need. Here's how we're building this out. Let's go. And so they just absolutely knocked it out of the park with organizing all these items.
And did you go to a similar size? Did you find a similar size and set up to what you had with this sort of split or almost like sublease type relationship with Planet Fitness?
So we went bigger because we said, hey, bigger is better at this point. We can fit more people. We're going to a bigger market. So we found a bigger location. What we ended up finding was a former Restaurant Depot. Restaurant Depot had outgrown their location, and they went from 50,000 to 100,000 square foot location down the road. And we ended up subleasing from them. We demised the building. We took 23,000, I believe. But similar on the trampoline space, we added a couple more trampoline attractions. We added an additional dodgeball court. We made bigger party rooms. We added a parents' viewing deck. And then we jumped the size of our arcade from 9 pieces up to about 25. Yeah. So we could see the opportunities and say, hey, we're missing out on revenue over here. We need more parties. We need more dodgeball. We need, more of this, more of that. So
you kept the first location as it was, and then you just updated with the things that you learned with the second one.
Exactly. The size was the limiting factor, and and with our original, and so that's what we said.
How'd that go? So how'd that launch go with number 2?
It was great. Real interesting. What's funny was at the time, so Facebook, we were doing a lot of Facebook. Facebook for Business was brand new. And
this was like 2013-ish.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Facebook for Business was new in 2012. And what was funny was we were building followers in our Warwick page, and it was like, wow, we had 2,000 followers, 3,000 followers. And then we had this massive grand opening, right? And we did a lot of community events, and we tried to get the word out as best as possible. When we went to the Hartford location, we had built our Facebook up to 7 or 8 or 10,000 followers. And we were like, wow, this thing's going to crush it out of the gates. If you thought the Warwick opening was great, wait till you see this one. And we opened the doors, and it was like, Warwick's first day was a $20-something thousand day. Hartford's was 7,500. And so this doom and gloom came over, and I said, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. What did we do? Why didn't everybody on earth show up? And so, we immediately, I took, a friend of mine and a friend that ended up becoming a franchisee, Mark Murphy, and I spent the weekend out in Hartford, and we called every billboard company in, we called every local magazine in, and we just doubled, tripled down, quadrupled down on our advertising spend. And over the next 4 weeks, we saw this ramp up to this point where Hartford became became the big dog. That was the number one park. So it was, I think that we were able to leverage some of our amazing staff in Warwick to train our Hartford staff. But there was definitely a learning curve on the marketing side of things. There's some pain. I lived in Hartford in a $55 a night days in with my buddy Joe, who says we built this location. Had some like bulletproof glass on the front, and when you walked in, so it was, but you work on a shoestring budget to build this business, and you do what you have to do. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
So then from there, did you franchise after the second location was up and going, or?
We did. So my father and his business partner approached us about 6 months after the first location opened, and they said, "Hey, this is awesome. We want one." And, they were in their, we'll say like early 50s at the time, early and mid 50s at the time. And so they kind of just gotten out of their businesses and they were looking to put their money somewhere and do something cool. And so they said, "Hey, what about franchising?" And so we put together our franchise docs really early. And then they became the first franchisee, and they were in construction in parallel to us in Hartford. So we opened Hartford 11 months later. After our first location, they opened Norwood, Mass as the first franchise location 1 year after our first location opened.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was fast. And so my father, I always say he was the best and worst franchisee at the same time, because, you got to love him, because he said, "Yeah, I believe in this and you guys got something great and I want one." And,
but he's in your ear on everything you need to do.
Well,
right?
He's my dad, right? And my dad, now I'm telling him what to do, and that's not how our whole life worked and our relationship worked. So he's always told me what to do. Now I'm telling him what to do, and so anyways, the good and bad, learning.
So did you continue then to grow it through sort of friends and family who you knew, or did you go the broker network side, or how did you? Because right now you've got about over 30 locations, and we can talk about that and your future growth. But like, how did you guys get to that point? Was it through people you knew? Was it through word of mouth, or did you go the broker network side?
Yeah, no, we so for the first couple of years, we ended up just working with friends and family. So a friend of one of our business partners in Delaware opened the next location in 2014. And then in 2015, my father and his partner opened a second location. And then Mark Murphy, who came in to help with marketing and help with some of the business development, opened his location in Watertown, Mass in 2015. So from 2012 through 2016, we had 6 locations, 4 franchised with friends and family. So it was, hey, let's test out these systems and processes and procedures. Before we roll this out to anybody outside of friends and family, we need to get the honest feedback from the people that we know and trust.
Yeah. So how's it? So, I mean, obviously since then, you've had growth. Well, I mean, what's been the biggest challenge thus far? I mean, it sounds like too that you're always having, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, to pay attention to the trends and to shift and adjust and adapt. And I know, you've had to do that as well. I mean, what's been the biggest challenge for this type of a business?
So I would say, a couple things. So the industry was interesting. So, by the time 2016 came around, trampoline parks were flying across the United States. And also the retail apocalypse started to happen. And, with proof of concept, you started seeing more trampoline parks get out of warehouse and get into maybe B- retail space or C+ retail space. So we started seeing a saturation factor. And so as we're developing, it's going, oh, we're opening here. Oh, wow. Within 2 weeks, our competitor's opening there as well. Oh, this market's not a two-park market. What the heck? And so it got really competitive really fast. And, so that's what pushed us to differentiate and really start evolving the concept and go into different attractions, larger in a large,
So what'd you do? Tell me what you guys did at that point to differentiate.
So we said, hey, look, we've got, we're watching these families come in here, parents are coming in, kids are playing, parents are, we still had concession standish food at that time. The pizza was better, but it wasn't dog food. It was definitely better. We said, hey, look, we need to really start catering to the whole family. It's the parents come in, they pay for their 1 hour. They're sitting on the bench, staring at their phone while their kids are jumping. And then as soon as the hour's up, they pack them up, they leave. So what we ended up doing was a couple things. One, we enhanced the restaurant experience. So, if you have good food, it keeps people there longer. They'll end up spending more money. They'll have a better time. If they're going to stay longer, though, we also need other attractions for them to do. And so we looked at things that, hey, maybe mom and dad or grandma and grandpa will join in and let's do something. Most parents are not jumping on trampolines. While it sounds like they would, I would say 3%, 2% are out there with their kids jumping. The rest are sitting there and they're not going anywhere near it. So enhanced the arcade and we added laser tag. And so what this allowed us to do at that time was to take our a la carte pricing model and start treating it like the McDonald's combo meal. And so more attractions, put it at higher ticket price because now we're grouping things. Hey, instead of your $15 jump, the first ticket price is $22, but you get an hour of jump plus you get a $5 arcade card. For $27, you get an hour of jump, a $5 arcade card, and a game of laser tag. And so as we started really toying with these combos, we started seeing people stay longer and spend a lot more money. And our per cap spend went from $15 per person up to $26 per person. The length of stay went from an hour and 5 minutes up to an hour and 45 minutes. So it was pretty interesting how it started to evolve.
Yeah, I mean, it's the name, right? You think about it from a smart vantage point, which is to say, how can we keep people here longer? And the more time people spend here, the more they're going to spend monetarily, which is a logical but very smart way to do it. If we flash forward a little bit to today and like where you're going, we're right on the heels of 2023, getting in there. What's the location look like now? What's the offering like now, and then going into 2023 and beyond?
It's awesome. It is, make your jaw drop. I mean, so today, which is what we're calling our Generation 3 park, we really started continuing to evolve that, and build upon that philosophy of, hey, we need to give more to the families, and all the other concepts, all of what were our original competitors in the trampoline park space, some were not evolving at all. And so they would get that core group of 8 to 13-year-olds. Some went more to the kiddish side and they became more of a true Chuck E. Cheese competitor. And we said, hey, there isn't a true family entertainment franchise out there. And so how do we really differentiate ourselves and say we are true family entertainment where everybody can come in and participate? So 2019, in this business, you always have to evolve and change attractions and keep things very interesting for your customers. And I brought the team into the office and I said, hey, look, our Gen 2 park that we built upstairs, and our offices were downstairs. When we built upstairs in 2018, it is crushing it. But we want to continue these great sales. What are we going to do upstairs to make it better next year? And the team was hemming and hawing. We could do this, we could do that. And we just basically ran out of space. And I looked at the team and I said, we've got 20,000 more square feet down here. Who's on board? And it was just that kind of terror, that fear, right? And I think it's always these, you get to these point when you're building the business where when we first started, we had $80 left my wife and I had $80 left in our bank account. Thank God it did what it did. And we just kept building upon that. But every time you come out of that situation, you say, boy, I really don't want to put myself back in that situation again.
I get it. Yeah, you're like, whoo, I got through that.
You can only stomach so many of them, right? So what we ended up doing was I put ourselves back in that situation, and I told our CFO at the time, and I told my other business partner, I said, look, we just signed a lease over here. We're taking it on. And at first they said, oh, yeah, that's exciting. And then, partway through the build out, they're like, why are we doing this? Why did you convince us to do this? And what we ended up doing was we added bowling, we added a bar, we added virtual reality, we added a new attraction called XP Arena. We added a much more robust restaurant experience. And so now you originally started as 18,000 square feet, morphed into a Gen 2, 23, 25,000 square foot space. And now here we are sitting at roughly 45,000 square feet with more attractions in one location in the state than you've ever seen in your life. And really interesting watching the dynamic of the customers as we started to evolve. And I think the funniest story, and maybe I'm being long-winded here, but I think they're kind of fun stories. Yeah, I remember sitting at the bar after we opened 3 weeks before COVID, by the way, just dropped $2 million extra on this improvement. And it's another story. Anyways, I'm sitting at the bar, right? I'm just watching the customers come in, and a couple moms came in with their kids, and their eyes lit up because our entrance moved from the back of the building upstairs to now front and center. People are looking around thinking, wow, look at this lighting, look at this bowling, look at all this wow effect, right? And the trampolines are upstairs, and these two moms came over, looked at the bar, and they said, oh, we have to go sit with our kids. And I thought, oh, shoot, that's not what I wanted to see. 5 minutes. So they go upstairs, they get their kids jumping. 5 minutes later, these two moms come down, they sit at the bar, and they looked at me. They didn't know who I was, but they looked at me and they said, the kids are all right, right? I'm like, yeah, my kids are all right. They're all right. So I'm just sitting there in my t-shirt, and they said, 2 glasses of wine, please. So they ordered 2 glasses of wine. They end up, so now they're having fun. They're having a good time. We'll take a pizza, please. They order pizza. 2 more glasses of wine, please. And then I watch them get up, and now they're excited, and they see the virtual reality machine, this attraction called Omni. And they looked at each other, and they went and played, They snuck over. They felt like they were sneaking on their kids, like, we're going to go play, and the kids aren't. And so I watched them order 4 glasses of wine, a pizza, and go each play a game of Omni. They just dropped $120 right in front of me while their kids were upstairs. And that is, I'm just saying, holy smokes, we would have never seen that had we not put this here. So it was cool. It was very cool. It was like, high five.
Well, you've done a great job of painting the picture of how this brand has evolved. I'm curious, who's the prototypical, or who's the preferred, I guess, type of franchisee who comes in to buy one of these?
That's molded over time. Our Gen 1 parks were about $1 million to $1.5 million to open. Gen 2 park around $2.5 million. Now we're sitting around 3.5 to 4.5 million. So the franchisees coming in now are definitely more. It's not your mom and pop looking to replace their job. We're definitely more sophisticated investors. We see a lot of multi-unit franchisees that have built out this infrastructure for their other brands, whether it's a QSR or some type of hospitality, a lot of hotels that say, hey, look, we've built out this infrastructure. And what happens to a lot of these multi-unit franchisees and these family offices that make investments into larger businesses is they build this infrastructure, and then you have all these great employees, and these great employees want to grow. And if you don't feed them more to grow into, you're going to lose the employees. So it's almost like they build this team, and then they need to feed the team. And so what's interesting about launch is that you do have some QSR in there with the restaurant. You have hospitality, so that relates to a lot of them. The family entertainment piece is different, and it's new, and I think it's what a lot of I think is cool, right? So you got a really cool concept, very differentiated from anything else. If you have an established team that's looking to grow, your team is going, rather than go serve burgers or fry chicken, this is something that they're going to want to be a part of. This is very cool. And then there's like this little hidden something of, hey, I could be the cool parent if I open one of these things. And you are the coolest parent in school when you own a launch. I promise you that. So there's a couple things that it's kind of like the coolness factor is the icing on the cake, but the investment level, building, piggybacking onto what the existing team already. And then there's, oftentimes there's a real estate play for these guys. If somebody can can buy a building or build a building ground up and put a launch inside. It's, it cash flows very nicely.
Is this a semi-absentee type model? In other words, I mean, it's always, and let me rephrase that. It's a bad question. So many franchises will sell themselves as a semi-absentee. And if you get a location or you get a business up and going and you have a team in place, that can certainly, be the case. I always want to be careful to say, any business that you get going, you're going to have to be there. You're going to have to pay attention. You're going to have to be overseeing things. But is this something where somebody invests in that, has the right team in place, they can approach it from the perspective of, like you said, there can be a real estate component to it, but they don't necessarily need to be there every single day once it gets going.
Yeah, they need somebody engaged, and oftentimes my recommendation, the way I do this, and it actually is pretty well aligned with a lot of the franchisees that come into the system. Looking for that managing member. Do you have a managing member that has a little skin in the game, 5%, 10%, that's running the location, that treats it like their own? Because if you're somebody that says, hey, I'm looking to open 2 of these and I'm going to drop $8 million, like, you're not going to be in there selling tickets, right? So you are essentially going to be absent. However, you need somebody there with I believe you need somebody there with some skin in the game in order to make this perform to its potential. It's a big machine. There are a lot of components that, nothing's rocket science inside, but there are a lot of moving components. And when done well, the business model just speaks for itself.
Well, sort of a final question for you, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on Franchise Euphoria today. Tell me, for the people out there getting going with their concepts, thinking about franchising, thinking about the next step, there's so many things to consider. It's impossible to whittle down to one thing. But as you look back, and of course, hindsight's 2020, what's one thing you wish you would have known that you kind of learned the hard way as you built this?
I think if you are 100% on your brand and on your concept, so for me, I think I've always used my own money. It's to our detriment in the fact that we would wear 3 hats and we wouldn't hire somebody until we put the 4th hat on, right? And if to create a world-class franchise, you need to build out the infrastructure properly. You need a robust marketing platform because you can't put that on your franchisees. You need a robust operational system that can build out and truly support the growth that lies ahead. Everybody goes right to development, and obviously you need to sell units and open units in order to feed the rest. But what I see often, and we got in a lot of this trap was, hey, sell, open, and then once it was time to operate, it was we were weak on the operation early on. We were weak on the operations and marketing side, and so you really you need to be prepared. You need to build ahead of that growth. And you can't just plug in average players. You need some people from the industry. You need franchise players on your team that understand the franchisee-franchisor relationship. And I think making that investment in the rock stars is very important to your success. Your early franchisees are the voice. They're going to either continue to help sell the business for you, or they're going to badmouth you and crush you. So it's very important that the early adopters get the best service possible and the best support possible.
Rob, for those who want to learn more about the concept, what's a good place for them to go?
So we've got launchtrampolinepark.com is our main website. To learn more about the franchising, there's a franchise tab on there that they can go to. And then they can certainly visit any of our locations that we have existing right now.
Yeah. Did you just open up I think you're opening up a new one in Michigan. Is that right?
Yeah, we are. We just opened Grand Rapids. That was a location that we acquired from another brand and we converted. So Grand Rapids just opened. we've got about 10 in the pipeline right now. So, COVID really chopped us at the knees and set us back a little bit, but the momentum in the pipeline is really growing. The momentum feels really great. And to be honest, the team that we've put in place this last couple of years has been really tough, emotionally, physically, just coming out of COVID and rebuilding the team. But I can say that going into 2023, everybody is fired up. And
well, I could tell, I could hear it in your voice. And I think, thank you for sharing your story and Erin's story, your wife along the way, and how she's been obviously co-owner and part of this entire story. It's really inspiring to hear. And I can only imagine with COVID how difficult that was. But all I can say is you survived and now you move forward.
We're here, baby.
Like everybody else, right?
We're here, and you know what? We're going to be here for another 100 years. So watch out.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your story. Look forward to hearing about your success and your continued success in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us on today.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Franchise Euphoria. If you enjoyed it, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. It really helps to get this show out to more and more people. Also, if you have any questions, have ideas for guests or topics, please email me, josh@indyfranchiselaw.com. That's josh@indyfranchiselaw.com. And finally, please note that this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes and is not in any way, shape, or form meant to be any kind of legal advice. If you're seeking legal advice, please contact a lawyer. Have a great one. Happy franchising.